Beside the Brook, Chapter 13. Queenie wants her own way. Hazel the duck did not improve in spite of Teddy's careful nursing. While her three sisters waddled away happily every morning down the track to the brook, she just sat in her box and moped. Teddy sometimes turned her out in a sunny patch, but she did not move far. She became quite tame, and always managed to quack a little greeting when he appeared. To vary her outlook, he carried her to the farm when he fetched the milk, and Hazel enjoyed the ride inside his jacket with her head poking out. The three healthy birds took no notice of her, for wild things either ignore or persecute a sufferer among them. There is no love for the victim unless it be between mother and child. Within a month Hazel died, and the shepherd hid the fact from the children until they had grown used to her absence. The summer grasses were dry and yellow, and the forest roof had turned from the transparency of early summer to a darker green. The earth was full of beauty that changed as the sun passed across the sky. The daily reading of his Bible provided food for the shepherd's mind and filled him with great joy. He was no crabbed old age, for now he felt he was beginning to live. "Would that I had discovered the truth before," was his regret, for he remembered the words, "Those that seek me early shall find me." Finding him is a lifelong quest, but if it please God, I shall not be too late, he thought. Kenneth Summers was a regular visitor at the shieling, and together the old and the young discussed those things that matter most in life. "I cannot understand," observed Kenneth once, "how people can deceive themselves so. They live as if they never had to give an account, yet everyone knows he must die. Perhaps it is that knowing this they try to forget it in a mad round of pleasure-seeking and noise. But it is all a sign that these are the latter days," Teddy reminded him, "for it is written, men shall be lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God." "Yes, and having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof," added Kenneth. "This is truly evident today. There is the form, but not the sincerity." "And God's blessing are put to a wrong use," said Teddy. "Though we are blessed with more advantages than our forefathers, faith is more difficult to find amongst us." "That is another sign that these are the last days. The prophet Daniel says, 'Seal the book even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased.'" Kenneth looked up as he spoke at a white airliner shining against the blue sky. "That's on its way to Australia, I expect," he said. "They go there from this aerodrome." "I hope I will soon be ready," said the shepherd. "I feel almost sure you will," replied the young man. Leaving the shepherd's home one evening, Kenneth cycled through the village, and in doing so spied Mr. Sprackling busy in a small patch of ground lent him for a garden. "And how are you, Mr. Sprackling?" called he cheerily. The timberman stopped digging and walked stiffly. "Not so bad," he said. "Can't grumble. The one leg be a bit stiff still." "With rheumatism?" inquired Kenneth, noticing that he stroked his thigh with his hand. "No, that were the leg I had it in. No, 'twere that there Queenie," he said, nodding in the direction of the field where the horses were grazing out of sight. "Oh, she's been up to her tricks again, has she?" smiled Kenneth, who had not forgotten Queenie's character while at Exley. "She be a fair devil at times," groused Mr. Sprackling. who nevertheless was proud of his horses. "Snowball be all right, but Queenie be artful. Yeah, artful." "What was her latest prank?" asked Kenneth, trying not to appear amused. "Well," began Mr. Sprackling, settling one foot on the spade and folding his arms on the handle. "'Twere when we were carting furs from the big cover a fortnight or so ago. Timber yard wouldn't hold no more, so we has to pile up logs in park alongside," he continued, mixing his grammar into a fine hotchpotch. "Now Queenie didn't like this. She'm fond o' gwinning the timber yard. I dunno why, less it be from habit. And she feels more at home there, and she got troublesome. Not reversed," continued Mr. Sprackling, striving to be accurate in every detail. "'Twere second load. 'Twere round about dinner time. Snowball were in front, and a good thing she were." Then Mr. Sprackling placed his spade on the ground in preparation for going through all the actions. "Now, s'posing that were the load over there, and these here were the posties I had for rolling the logs down, see?" Kenneth nodded. "Well, I undoes the horses from shafties, links their chains round logs, and when all be ready, I hollers, 'Pull it, bossa!' Snowball there, she pulled wi' all her strength, but I'll be blowed if that black hoss would pull out, so nothing happened. 'Pull her, bossa!' I hollers again, and Mr. Sprackling contracted the muscles of his own arms in vivid recollection. And nothing happened again. I hollered at Queenie, but 'twasn't any use. She were in a very wicked frame of mind. But logs had to come off timber cart anyway, so we tried again, and poor Snowball was straining and shining with sweat, while that black devil just stuck up and did nowt. Then I gets cross and gives her a whack with me belt. Snowball thinks I be cross with she, and gives a gurt heave, which brings top log rolling down on hind legs of Queenie, which served her right. But more than that, Queenie gets bowled over with logs striking her back legs, and I gets this year leg struck when too. And that silly hoss lying there wi' her legs up in air as if she couldn't get up, and t'other one looking around consarned about what she'd been and done. Not that I warn't consarned myself. I didn't know but what she had done summat, for she wouldn't get up. So I unharnessed Snowball and let her bide. She'm a good hoss. And I spoke very kindly to Queenie to coax her up, but blowed if she'd move, not even to roll sideways, and log wasn't touching her either. Then all those stupid folk from yard came and gathered round, telling me to do this and that. One stoop was talking about sending for vet, but I soon shut he up. I knows my hosses better than any vet. So I carried on speaking very kindly to Queenie. 'Good lass,' I says, clapping her here and there. 'Now do he git up like a good hoss.' 'Tweren't no good, so I tried somebody else. Fixed on Snowball's nose bag and went on for Queenie's. That did it. Her waved her legs only once. Then up she got without any trouble and shook herself, just like that." Words failed Mr. Sprackling at the recollection. "Yes, and she were all right, and had been all long, and me with a grazed leg and all those stupid devils from the yard laughing at me, and that black un too, because I swear she were." Mr. Sprackling mopped his brow. "It was certainly too bad," agreed Kenneth. "And was your leg much hurt?" "Only bruised and grazed," said the timberman, stroking it. "He'll come all right again soon." "You had several devils present," said Kenneth solemnly. Mr. Sprackling looked up quickly, wondering if the young man were laughing at him. But remembering the earnestness of their last conversation, he altered his mind. "What do he mean?" "Those devils in the story," said Kenneth. "How many were there?" Mr. Sprackling avoided a direct reply. Devil was a common word in his collection, and he used it freely and frequently of any living thing that happened to annoy him. "Now don't he start," cautioned he, stooping to pick up his spade. But Kenneth was not to be put off. "I'm serious, Mr. Sprackling," he said. "I do not want to know what you mean by the devil. Is he one, or is he a number?" Mr. Sprackling scratched the back of his head, which tipped his hat forward towards his blue spectacles. "Blowed if I know exactly," he confessed. "Ain't he a critter as plagues human folk till they does summat wrong?" he enquired, as if suddenly inspired with an idea. That was closely followed by the remembrance of an awful picture from Pilgrim's Progress Illustrated, which enlivened his youth. "Ain't he got leather wings and horns and a forked tail? And don't he live in hell?" Kenneth did not laugh. "Come and sit down for 5 minutes, Mr. Sprackling," said Kenneth, motioning him to a wheelbarrow. "You might as well rest yourself while you can." The timberman sat heavily down. The barrow was weighted with rubbish so that it was quite safe. A robin perched on the spade which Mr. Sprackling had struck in the ground. "Your ideas about the devil are all confused like everybody else's, Mr. Sprackling. I hope you will pardon me for saying so. It's not your fault, but just the result of careless and wrong teaching. Do you mean anyone in particular, your horse, for instance, or the yard men, or do you mean the chap with the horns?" "I dunno what I mean, now I comes to think on it," said Mr. Sprackling. "Do he know any more nor I do, then?" "Well, I have been fortunate enough to have been brought up on Bible teaching, and the Bible settles the matter." Mr. Sprackling felt this was so. "Bain't he in the Bible, then?" For reply, Kenneth went on, "The devil is not a person at all, but the power of sin as it appears in people. There is no personal devil to tempt us to do wrong. Every man is tempted when he's drawn away of his own desires and enticed." Mr. Sprackling was interested, though still doubtful. "Ain't his other name Satan?" he asked. "That is a Hebrew word that was kept in the English translation of the Bible. It sounds like a person's name, but its meaning is adversary." "Oh," said Mr. Sprackling, not sure if he followed. "The devil is the sin power in human beings," continued Kenneth. "Jesus overcame it, and by the sacrifice of his sinless self condemned it. If we make ourselves part of him, then sin can become dead in us. We can become new creatures in him." "And where be hell?" inquired Mr. Sprackling. "I thought the devil he lived there." "As a matter of fact, you were poking about in a kind of hell yourself this afternoon when I came along." Mr. Sprackling looked scared. "Whatever do he mean?" he gaped. "Weren't you healing or helling up potatoes?" smiled Kenneth. "Digging up the good earth to cover the tubers? Hell comes from an old English word meaning to cover. When the Bible describes warriors as going down to hell with their weapons of war, it is an allusion to their burial." Mr. Sprackling, being reminded about his potatoes, shifted about as if eager to get on with his job, and Kenneth, who could have gone into the matter further, refrained from doing so. Noticing the timberman's restlessness, he rose. "I'll be getting on then. "I hope your leg will soon be right," he said. "Thank ye, young man," said Mr. Sprackling. And as he stiffly resumed his digging, he muttered to himself, "Strange ways o' thinking he has. But I dunno."